webinar. It's actually the last webinar for the year, the last webinar for our users. So on behalf of the company, thanks so much for joining us this year. It's been just about a year that I've started doing this, and it's been a pleasure joining you kind of once a week, once every other week on these webinars. So hope that it's been helpful, and would love any feedback at the end. You can reply via email with anything you'd like to see in the new year. So anything that this might kind of spark your interest in the platform, or just anything you'd like to learn a little bit more about. But just to get started, we are today looking at outreach in the new year using legislator data and mailing lists in FiscalNote. So the agenda today is pretty brief. I'll tell you a little about me. We'll go into GRM, and I know this is a term you hear often, but we're really trying to kind of get it ingrained into how you use the system, just knowing that it's what it is. We'll look at research and strategy in a GRM, and then I'll actually talk about outreach and really kind of the tactical in the platform. How are you creating lists? How are you sending lists, and so on. So I'm Amanda, your client education manager. I also handle your support, so any questions, any technical issues that you have typically come to me. Even if you send them to your client success manager, they kind of forward it on to support. So, you know, my email is Amanda@FiscalNote. We also have support at FiscalNote. I've been doing this for just over a year. Was actually in FiscalNote another role before that, and was at National Journal doing government affairs research. So I've been spent a little bit of time here, and it's always great learning from you all, and so glad you're able to be here today. Okay, so a quick overview. I know that a number of you have probably heard this maybe even last week, or if you were on our webinar yesterday, but GRM, the concept, is a government relationship management. So we know that government affairs, government relations, it's kind of called different things, public affairs in different companies, but what we're really talking about is government relationship management. So really a system that is able to aggregate all the data that has to do with any of the relationships you have with government entities. So legislators, policymakers and agencies, committees, the different legislative chambers, and even just the data itself. So how you relate to the bills and rules that are coming down from the government. So a GRM software platform is one that has this government data. It allows you to search and track and organize that data, but it also allows you to analyze and organize insights that you reap from that data in order to craft your strategy. And so that's the kind of that flow is what we're talking about today, and allows you to do all of this so that you can actually operate as any other business function would, with data to back up the work that you're doing. So a GRM facilitates in-depth and targeted research into the policymakers and insights that you need most. So we're talking about doing research, searching and tracking bills in order to figure out kind of what states might be most amenable to your issues in order to then act on that insight. So again, it's that flow of research to insights to actions. And so thinking about research and strategy, we've actually taken some time to speak with some of our users, do a couple of interviews to understand really what is it that you're using FiscalNote to do. Beyond using, you know, discovery alerts and watch lists to track things, how are you using it to craft your government affairs strategy? And so some of the things that they said, there's a number of things. So for example, clients that said that they use it in order to evaluate their opportunities and connections. Right, so understanding which legislators you've spoken to in the past or have relationships with, so that you can figure out who can you leverage, right? Who can you reach out to and know that they're going to be they're going to think positively about your issues, or might not be too much of an opposition. Using our data, so our voting data, to understand what kinds of bills legislators have introduced in the past. So legislators that are a part of a committee, you know, might work along with their fellow members in that committee, but what kinds of bills are they interested in outside of that, and how do those bills fare? One of the stories that sticks out to me is a client that said that they use the data to figure out whether or not that chamber is going to be willing to hear new arguments. So do they pass bills easily, and more specifically in their topic area, so in either industrials or chemicals, does this committee actually pass a lot of new bills? And so then using that and then storing that information in the GRM so that they can refer to it later to say, well, this committee might not be amenable, we might need to figure out a new strategy, new information to send them, new ways to educate these legislators. Also thinking about, can you get information to these people ahead of time? So if you know that a committee hearing has been scheduled for the next week, you now have a week, you can set actions in the system to remind you to actually send information their way. Also things like the personality of a legislator. So using both our biographical data, and we'll actually look at that in just a second, I'm using biographical data to say, okay, they hold seats on this kind of nonprofit, or they studied this in university. They might be connected to our policy area in some way. So you can start to figure out their personality and figure out how they might vote on your bill. So then this brings me to, what information are we actually providing you, right? This first part is really just the cold hard facts. We're giving you data. We're giving you basic information about legislators. Specifically, and what we find and what we've found our users find important is really like the years in office and their re-election year, because this allows you to put a context how long this legislator has been in office. And what kind of experience do they have? What kind of connections do they have within their chamber? Are they someone who wields a lot of power so that what they say kind of goes, or are they junior, and do you need to get a couple of people kind of on your side? We provide information on committees and caucuses, and you'll see a drop down in the system so you can look over time what committees has this legislator been a part of. And then contact information. So this is actually a really key one, and one we get probably our most support tickets about. So our contact information is provided from a third-party vendor. And so what they're doing is they're really calling up these offices on a week-by-week basis to figure out, are these phone numbers accurate? Are these emails accurate? Now, FiscalNote is only going to be able to provide you what we get from this vendor, and oftentimes they might even be at a disadvantage if that state doesn't really provide that information. But FiscalNote is kind of dedicated to getting you the information that you need. So if there's something that's missing, please do let us know, and we will either go through our partner or able to use our services team to acquire that information. So do feel like you can provide that feedback. And so we move from the cold hard facts into actually looking at insights and then reaping insights from that data. So what's some of the analysis that we provide you? Here on the right, you'll see our voter alignment pane. And so again, I'll show you where all of this exists in the platform, but I just wanted to kind of be recognizable. The voter alignment pane is very important, and it kind of hinges on something that we really try to impart on users. You'll know from your onboarding or from your trainings with CSMs, with your client success manager, is inputting data. So you'll hear us often say position and priority, position and priority. We allow you to input the position that your organization wants to take on a piece of legislation and the priority of that bill. So is it high, low, medium priority? By inputting that data, you're not only creating a system of record for your own team, so you're saying, okay, now everyone understands we're all on the same page. But what FiscalNote can start to do is figure out, do legislators align with your priorities? So this pane is actually showing, and all this data is from Representative Paul Ryan's legislator page, but it's to say on those bills, so on a bill that was high priority and that my organization supports, did he vote yes or no? How is he aligned with the bills that are either in favor of our priorities or not? There's another piece of information that as you're gathering data, building your lists for outreach, you can say, okay, well, these people are aligned in a certain way, these are not. How do we fix that? How do we create a strategy that gets them the information that they need? Next, you'll see the legislators that vote similarly. So using our voting data, so based on how legislator A votes and how legislator B votes, we're able to say with a certain percentage of accuracy how similar one legislator is to another. So how similarly they vote and how similarly they might be to co-sponsor a certain bill. And so that's that pane you'll see here. And we know that, the way you break down your work may be, you might have to organize it in a different way. So we want you to be able to say, I want to look at just in the House, just in the Senate, or sort by their name, by their district, voting and co-sponsorship. And then this last graph here that's a little bit cut off is the status breakdown. So taking all of the bills that a legislator has introduced, you can see where all those bills are in their life cycle in that pie chart. So obviously at the beginning of a session, it might not be as helpful, but as you go through the session, you can see kind of the strength of a legislator's effectiveness almost. How effective are they in passing legislation in their chamber? Obviously, there are a lot of factors that go into that, but that's another piece of information that's helpful to know as you go into meetings, into fly-ins with these representatives. Okay, so I just threw a lot at you. Really, the point, the summation of all of that is FiscalNote is providing you a lot of information. We want to provide you data as well as insights, analysis. But crafting your strategy also requires then, inputting information and recording information. So now we're going to go through how FiscalNote, how the GRM, the Government Relationship Management System, allows you to record information in tandem with the information that it provides to you. The first piece of that being notes. So we allow you to store personal and organization-wide analysis so that you're able to share information across your team. For example, you can store notes on legislator pages, and committee pages. Again, speaking with some clients, thinking about what it is that they use FiscalNote to do, organization-wide, what's some of the information that they want to share? Well, things like, what kind of bills does this committee typically pass? Like, are they very strict? Are they usually broad? Storing that on the actual legislator or on the committee page so that anytime someone is about to go to a hearing, they can see that information. Or is a legislator particularly known for a certain area? So do they focus in a certain area? There are a number of places that we provide that information, but then if you can document it in the note, you're able to then quickly go to one spot on the legislator page, or your teammate is, in order to find that information. Private notes, on the other hand, are things that you just need to remind yourself, right? These are things that you need to see, no one else needs to see. So maybe something, what do you need to accomplish with that legislator or with that committee? As you're reading through bills, as you're analyzing legislators, you need to say, okay, well, I need to get this point across to this legislator. Or what do you want to remember when you're going to go give testimony? Or what kind of materials, what kind of leave-behinds or one-pagers should you be sending, or actually saving that document in the GRM. So taking a link to that PDF and saving it in a note so that a session later, 2 sessions later, you can remember what kind of information was successful in communicating your priorities. So from recording your information and making sure that you record holistic and complete data about your team's strategy, you then can move into acting and executing on that strategy. And so we want you to also be able to record information about that in your actions. So for example, taking the time and date so that you know exactly when maybe you're sending a mass email to a set of legislators. Then specifying the kind of outreach you're doing. So maybe it's an email, maybe it's a support letter, things like this. So you want to make sure to include that so that over time you can see what was effective. Maybe all the emails you sent on a certain bill didn't really get the point across, but when you did a fly-in, it did. So wanting to see the changes in your success rate based on the type of activities you're doing. Who else is involved? So who else on your team? Maybe someone else is also working on this bill. You can include them on the action. What other legislators or committees or bills are related? So then this really gets back to the R that we were talking about earlier. The relationship. So what are the relationships between the different bills that you're working on and the different committees that you're working on or the legislators you're working on? As you start to link them together, you can start to see how much impact you might be having, not just on one bill, but on many bills, just because of what they're related to. And then lastly, really summarizing all that information. So the next time you meet with a legislator, just saving, what was the conversation you had? How likely were they to, take up your policy area or really vouch for you, or maybe they really didn't agree with the position you were bringing. again, keeping this as a place to manage all the knowledge that your team has about these legislators then makes the list that you create even more effective, because you're really picking out just those legislators that are amenable to your information. So one thing here we'll go over as well is tagging. So in your actions as well as in your notes, and we'll look at this in the demo, you can use hashtags. And so this is really meant to allow you to categorize and really start to attach traits to legislators and to committees. One that we see all the time, no matter what kind of organization or user you are, is using legislators and hashtags to say this person is a hashtag champion. So you're able to now have a list, keep a running list based on the interactions that you're having and whether or not a legislator is a champion for your position or for your priorities. Or are they an opponent? Do they oppose it? And so being able to clearly delineate that, you can then pull a list of all the actions where you were interacting with a champion and keep that list of legislators for later. Something that I just realized I didn't mention, in the portal for the webinar is a section where you can type in questions. Please do, in the middle of this, feel free to ask questions. I'm happy to answer, as well as I'll save time at the end to answer them as well. Or if something happens with the sound or the visuals, please do let me know. So just getting back here, also using hashtags in your actions or your notes to denote, which legislators did you meet with at a conference, or which legislators did you meet with during your fly-in. Again, this is all about keeping as much information in the GRM as possible. So when it comes time to pull lists based on the actions you need to take, you have as much information and data and context as possible. Okay, so we've gone through the research, pulling all the data. We've gone through inputting your information, kind of coming up with a strategy. Now we'll talk about the outreach portion. So really in the platform, what do we allow you to do? So we allow you to build lists that capture your most important audiences. And this is just a snapshot. You'll see here, this is the create a list module. And this is just the beginning of it. We'll go through the whole flow. You'll see a list of legislators there that you would then add to a list. But the kind of filters that we have here, we allow you to create lists based on state versus federal data. If you have both content sets, you're obviously able to pick and choose there. Chamber, so you could say, I want to only see Senate, I only want to see the House. You can decide by parties. Maybe within a state, you only want to talk to the Republicans or only to the Democrats. You can do that. You can also filter through contact information based on staffer title and even committee. So if you want to only speak to a certain committee within a state or in the federal Congress, you can, or based on you only want to talk to the health LAs, you can kind of delineate that way. As far as exporting lists or taking that list and acting on it, you can export to a CSV. So if you're someone who uses another email client like SurveyMonkey or MailChimp to send long emails or to send newsletters, you can export information from FiscalNote and import it into your other client. You can also email directly from the FiscalNote platform. So what happens is it takes all of the emails that you've decided you want to email and it puts it into your email clients, whether you use Gmail or Outlook, whatever is connected to FiscalNote, it goes straight to your email and BCCs everybody in that list. So that's a really easy way, quickly on the go. You pull a list of 10 names, you just send them a quick email before you head to a committee. You can do that really quickly. And then the last piece here before we jump into the system is just a couple of notes, some things that we've seen from some materials that clients have actually been able to share with us. So for example, as you're getting ready to do outreach, to do advocacy, especially the one-pagers that you leave, the leave behinds that you take to these offices, you really want to make sure that they're as effective as possible. A Word document with 500 words on it may not be what catches the eye of a legislator or their staff, right? If all of the pages that an LA gets look the same, probably not going to look at any of them. So you want to make sure that yours stands out. One thing that we hear time and time again is that tying your organization's policy interests to the constituents of a legislator is really going to get their attention. So to say, I have this many employees in your district, and the piece of information that you're about to vote on has this kind of impact on them, and really visualizing it. And there's something about actually showing kind of the outline of someone's state and someone's district that really says, oh wow, this can get even personal. This is about my constituents. So you want to tie your organization to their constituents. And then also being able to show the landscape of a particular policy area across the country, even if you're just going to one state, can kind of show, okay, this is really an issue that's picking up speed. And how does this legislator want to get ahead of this issue? So being able to visualize and use some of the maps that FiscalNote provides, some of the graphs that FiscalNote provides on these bills will better position you to get your point across and to really tell your team and your organization's story. So I just want to pause there for any questions that might have. Happy to answer them and give you just a minute, and then I'm just going to jump right into the system and show you some of the places that you can start to really do your research and then create your list. So I'll just give you guys a minute there. Awesome. So we had a question here about the creating mailing lists. So asking whether or not you're able to save lists in the system, or do you just have to export them? And you actually can save them. So we actually give you the ability to name the list that you want. So maybe New York Republicans, and then you can save that list and have it there. And you just need to run that list again. We'll actually take a look at that right now. We'll jump right into the system. Then let me know if anything's kind of funky with the visuals. Happy to fix it if there is. So just want to show you here in the platform, this should look pretty familiar. Here we have the mailing list. Anywhere you see that kind of paper airplane, that means mailing lists. If you haven't yet, that whole screen will be empty, but this is what it looks like to create your mailing list. So we'll say here, and maybe I'll say New York Energy, just as a test name. So if you press this button here next to the search bar, we'll pull up the filters. So then you can come here and really quickly type New York. I'm going to select both chambers, all parties, and then here you can actually narrow down and find committees and subcommittees. So I'm going to type energy here, New York Committee, Assembly Committee on Energy. You can even delineate whether you want the chairpersons, the vice chairpersons, and now you search. And here we go, just 11 legislators. So here, if you then select all, and you can select just the ones on the current page, you can select them one by one. When there are a lot of legislators, it's easier to select in batch. And then add all currently selected. And now here is your list. You can actually go and remove them individually if you need to. And now click Save. Then it takes you to a page where we break down the list. So you can see, okay, who are the staffers? What is their title? Depending on, again, it's kind of depending on what the state gives us. Sometimes there are issue areas along with that. We'll be able to provide that. Email information. And then up here, when the list is much longer, you can decide to only see staffers or only see legislators. Decide by staffer title who you want to be, who you want to outreach to, and the staffer issue areas if they're given. So that's creating the list. Now you'll see you can email directly. So I'll actually show you what that looks like. If I click email, and email using Gmail, because that's the client that we use, the host that we use, you'll see it takes me to my email and loads an actual a new message with all those people BCC'd. And this always kind of makes me nervous. I'm afraid I'm going to email a bunch of staffers on a whim, but it'll allow you to BCC. You can move them around, delete them as you'd like. X out of that quickly. Or you can export the list. So it'll just create another list for you that you'll download, and it'll be a CSV that I'll let you see in just one second. And this is the CSV that we show you. So, sometimes it can be a little bit messy depending on if all the data is there for each individual person, but you can then delete columns and kind of manipulate it however you'd like based on whatever you're inputting that data into. Get back here to the system. So now you'll see on the left-hand side, these are all of the lists that I've created. So the lists don't automatically update, but what you'll do is you'll come back here, and you can find the list that you had again, or create it again in order to find the new legislators. So that is one place that you can create lists. The other place is actually in committees. So I'll go here to federal legislation, search over committees, and show you the place that you can actually create lists directly from there. If we let it load here. And if I just click into the House Committee on Agriculture, you'll see here some of those modules that we saw in the presentation. So staff information for the committee. You actually see the leadership. Oh, this was long. Sorry about that. You'll see the leadership and the members of that committee, the subcommittees. And then again, where you can input actions based on that committee and notes, and any actions that you create will then live at the bottom of that page. If we go all the way to the top again, well, you'll see this bar here is static, and then there's a bar that says, a button that says mailing list. Directly from a committee, you could decide that you want to message only that committee. So we'll pull up the contact information that we have, allow you to filter through it, narrow things down if you need to, and then again, export and save that list or email directly from the platform. So this is another quick way. We actually didn't have this feature last session, so we'll be really interested to know how it comes in handy, how you're using it when the sessions pick up in January. That's the next place that you can create a list. The last piece of information that I really wanted to go into was a legislator page, and just to show you where all of those modules were that we went over earlier. So you go here into Mike Conaway. And we got a question here about how to change from all legislators in the U.S. to just one state. And I will jump back over to the mailing list to answer that in just 1 second. Thanks for the question. So here on the legislator page, again, basic information, contact information. You can actually search over that contact information. Committees and caucuses. You can see the legislators that vote similarly. You can actually decide in what topic area you want to search over. The bills that they've introduced, their top policy issues, where do they spend the most of their time introducing bills? How do they align with the bills that you've decided, you've inputted input your position on priority? Where their bills are in their life cycle, are most of them introduced? Have they passed different chambers? Their ideology as it relates to others in their chamber. So not just overall are they conservative, but how are they conservative or liberal within that chamber? And then again, the actions and notes modules on a legislator. And this is where you would input some of that information we talked about, hashtag champion, hashtag opposition, or met with a legislator and my colleague attended and wants us to send a one-pager, right? This is where you'd save that information. So that's the overview of the legislator page. I will jump back over to answer that question, change from all legislators in the U.S. to just one state. And I believe I would imagine that you're talking about the mailing list. So if I create list here, again, you press this button, and this is where you'd choose the legislature that you want to create a list on. Secondarily, could be asking about this. This is a question I receive a lot, is how you switch between content sets. This button here, and you're able to decide, are you looking over state legislation, federal legislation, and then bills, legislators, committees. That's this button here at the top to the left of the search bar. We had another question here about how you produce the storytelling and report page. So those were actually just images, examples that we've had in the past. I can actually show you where you create some of those maps, but I'd love to follow up with you. We actually have a services team that's interested in potentially helping people create those reports. So if there's anything you have in mind, would be happy to follow up with you. But some of those maps actually exist in the platform. So we're jumping off a little bit, but I hope this is still helpful. If you come here to watch lists, so this is going to be where you save the bills that you find important. Let's just go to one of my random watch lists. You'll see here the map based on where the bills in my watch list are across the country. So this is something, and anywhere you see this button, so this button here on the right side, we call it the hamburger button. It has 3 lines. When you click that, it allows you to, one, change the kind of map it is, and then also allows you to download the image out of the system. So you can use your watch lists in order to figure out, okay, for a certain policy area, this is a concentration of bills across the country, taking that map and putting it into a document. That was just one of the places that those maps would have come from. We also will be releasing within the next month, so by the beginning of the session, the first couple of weeks of the session, a new reporting. So you'll actually be able to pull in new information, pull in different graphs and different maps that you can then export out of the system. So we'll be doing a refresher webinar in the beginning of the month to go over how to do that. But again, happy to follow up if you are interested in more kind of what that storytelling page might look like. We'd love to bounce some ideas off you and see if we're able to help. Great. So that is an overview of what we're thinking when it comes to outreach, crafting your strategy, and then really executing on your strategy in the new session. Would love to answer any more questions, even if they're more general about the platform. This is really an open time. If you have any questions that you might not have sent to your client success manager, happy to answer them. I'll stay on for the next minute or two, allow anyone to ask any questions, and then happy to give you another half an hour back to your day. So feel free to enter any questions in there. Great. Well, it doesn't look like anyone has any other questions. Thanks again for joining, and have a happy holiday season. You'll get a couple of emails from us probably next week, just wrapping things up for the year. But good luck finishing out the year, and have a great couple of weeks.